Hello everyone. If you love heartwarming animal stories and want to follow the inspiring journey of these adorable friends, don't forget to hit the subscribe button now so you won't miss any of our videos. Now, let's dive into today's emotional story. Lily sat alone in her room, surrounded by the quiet hum of the world outside her window. The soft yellow light of the afternoon filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows on the walls. It was a peaceful moment, but Lily didn't feel peaceful. At just 8 years old, Lily had lived a life full of isolation and confusion. Diagnosed with autism at an early age, she struggled to connect with the world around her. The simplest tasks, making friends, speaking to others, even understanding how to engage, felt like impossible challenges. Her mother, Grace, often watched her from the doorway, a mix of love and helplessness in her eyes. Grace had done everything in her power to help Lily, from countless therapy sessions to enrolling her in special programs. But no matter how hard they tried, Lily remained distant. She didn't speak often, and when she did, her words were few and far between. At school, she was a shadow, a quiet observer on the sidelines while the other children played and laughed together. Lily didn't mind the silence. In fact, it comforted her. The noise of the world, the voices of people, the constant buzz of activity, these were things she didn't understand, things that overwhelmed her. She often retreated to her room, where the soft hum of her own thoughts was the only sound. Her parents had learned to give her space, understanding that their daughter needed time to process the world in her own way. Yet, even with all their love and patience, the ache of loneliness never seemed to fade. Lily often wondered why she couldn't be like other children. Why couldn't she laugh with them, play with them, join in their games? Instead, she watched from a distance, feeling a pang of sadness that she couldn't put into words. She would sit on the swings during recess, staring out at the other children running around the playground. They seemed so happy, so free, and Lily longed for that same freedom, the freedom to speak, to express, to be understood. At home, Lily found comfort in her routine. She liked the predictability of things, sitting at the same spot during meals, reading the same books, hearing the same lullabies at bedtime. These rituals gave her a sense of control over a world that often felt out of reach. But the silence in her life, the quiet isolation, also created a void. Lily didn't know how to bridge that gap, how to connect with the people who loved her most. It was as if there was an invisible wall between her and the rest of the world. One night, as Lily lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, the familiar weight of her thoughts pressed down on her. She had learned to keep most of her feelings inside, but tonight, they bubbled to the surface. She thought about her mother and father, who tried so hard to reach her, to help her, but always seemed so far away. She wanted to speak to them, to tell them how she felt, but the words didn't come. All she could do was lie there, silently wishing for something, someone, to make her world feel less distant. As the night stretched on, Lily closed her eyes, wishing that, just for once, she could wake up and find that the world was a little bit easier to navigate. But little did she know, things were about to change. The following morning, as Grace sat down with Lily at breakfast, she quietly mentioned an idea that had been on her mind for some time. "Lily," she said gently, "how would you feel about having a dog? A companion who could be with you, someone to help you feel safe and loved." Lily had never really considered it before. She didn't know much about dogs or how they could fit into her world. But when Grace's words hung in the air, something inside her stirred. Maybe a dog could be that missing link, the bridge between her silent world and the one she so desperately wanted to be part of. Maybe a dog could help her connect in ways that no one else could. That thought stayed with Lily throughout the day. She didn't say much, but in the depths of her quiet mind, a tiny spark of hope flickered. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the change she needed. The decision to adopt a dog wasn't made lightly, but Lily's parents, Grace and David, were hopeful. They had read countless articles and heard stories from other families about how animals, especially dogs, could help children with autism. There were stories of children who had learned to speak more, who had formed deeper connections, and who had felt a sense of comfort from a pet that they hadn't been able to find elsewhere. The idea had been floating in their minds for weeks, but it wasn't until Lily had expressed some interest in the idea that they took the next step. Grace, ever the hopeful mother, had arranged a visit to the local animal shelter. They decided to go on a quiet Saturday afternoon, hoping that Lily might feel a connection with a dog. When they arrived at the shelter, the sight was overwhelming. Dozens of dogs barked loudly, wagged their tails, and begged for attention. Lily instinctively stepped back, her hands pressing against her ears to block out the noise. It was too much for her, a cacophony of sounds that felt intrusive, like the world was closing in on her again. But as they walked down the aisle of cages, Grace noticed a quiet space at the back of the shelter. There, nestled in the corner, was a dog who seemed different from the rest. Unlike the others who were jumping and barking, this dog simply sat still, his large brown eyes watching the family with calm curiosity. "That's Max," the shelter worker said softly, noticing their attention. "He's a golden retriever mix. Max has been here for a while. He's a bit shy, but he's incredibly gentle." Lily's gaze met Max's, and something unexplainable stirred inside her. She didn't know why, but she felt drawn to him. The way his eyes held her gaze made her feel understood, as though he saw her in a way no one else did. Grace knelt beside Lily and asked, "Do you want to meet him?" Lily hesitated, unsure of what to do. But then, with a gentle nudge from her mother, she stepped closer to the cage. As if sensing her approach, Max stood up slowly and padded to the front of the cage. He didn't jump or bark. Instead, he lowered his head and gently nudged Lily's hand through the bars. His touch was soft, reassuring, and without words, Lily felt something shift within her. Max's presence was calming. Lily slowly extended her hand, and the moment Max's nose touched her fingers, a wave of comfort washed over her. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt safe. Max's eyes, filled with warmth and quiet understanding, made Lily feel like she wasn't alone anymore. "I think he likes you," Grace whispered, her voice full of emotion. Lily nodded quietly, the connection between them deepening in that moment. She didn't have to say anything, she didn't have to explain herself. Max just understood. He didn't demand anything from her. He was just there, offering her something she hadn't realized she needed: comfort, safety, and a chance to connect. After a few more minutes, Lily's parents exchanged a look of mutual understanding. It was clear that this was the right dog for her, the one who could help her find a way to communicate, to engage with the world around her. With a soft smile, Grace stood up and said, "We'll take him." The drive home was quiet, with Max lying quietly at Lily's feet. He hadn't barked or made any noise, but there was a sense of calmness in the car. Lily sat beside him, her hand resting gently on his soft fur. Max seemed content, as though he had found his place in the world too. That evening, when they arrived home, the transformation began. Lily was hesitant at first, unsure of how to adjust to having a dog in the house. But as Max settled beside her on the couch, something changed. His presence was comforting, grounding her in ways she couldn't explain. She no longer felt the overwhelming silence in the house. It was filled with the soft rhythm of Max's breathing and the occasional rustling of his fur. For the first time in a long while, Lily felt like she had a companion who would never judge her, a companion who wouldn't ask her to speak, who would simply sit by her side and offer his quiet support. Max had become her protector, her listener, and, in time, her friend. Days turned into weeks, and Lily's connection with Max deepened. She began to speak to him more often, asking him questions and telling him about her day. She still found it hard to talk to people, but with Max, words came a little easier. It was as though he had unlocked something inside her, a part of her heart that had been closed off for too long. One evening, after a long day at school, Lily found herself sitting in the living room, telling Max about the challenges of the day. She spoke about the noise in class, the difficulty of following instructions, and how her classmates didn't understand her. Max, as always, sat beside her, his head resting on her lap, listening intently. Lily looked down at him and said softly, "I'm glad you're here, Max. You help me feel better." Max's tail wagged, and Lily smiled. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a connection. Max was more than just a dog. He was the bridge that helped Lily connect to the world, helping her communicate in ways that were once too difficult for her. And with each passing day, Lily knew that she was beginning to speak, not just with words, but with her heart, and with the help of the loyal dog by her side. As the weeks passed, Lily began to notice something incredible happening between her and Max. Each day with him seemed to bring small changes, ones that she couldn't quite put into words, but that she felt deeply. Max wasn't just a companion, he had become her anchor, her support, the friend who listened without judgment, who never rushed her or expected too much. He simply allowed her to be herself. And in that space, something miraculous was beginning to unfold. At first, Lily had only whispered to Max, telling him stories of her day, sharing her thoughts in soft, hesitant words. But over time, her voice grew steadier. Max's silent companionship had a soothing effect, and with every moment spent together, Lily found herself more willing to engage with the world around her. There were still days when the world felt overwhelming, when the noise of the outside world felt too much, but with Max by her side, the burden of it seemed lighter. One day, Grace noticed something that made her heart swell with joy. Lily, who had always avoided eye contact and avoided speaking to others, was sitting in the kitchen, chatting with Grace as they prepared lunch. It wasn't a long conversation, just a few simple questions about how her day had been at school. But for the first time, Grace felt like Lily was opening up, even if just a little. "Mom," Lily said quietly, "Max helped me today. He made the noise go away." She was talking about the overwhelming sound of the classroom, the chatter of the other children, and the rustle of papers that always made her anxious. "When Max was with me this morning, I felt calm." Grace's heart swelled with love. She didn't know how much she had missed hearing Lily's voice until she heard it now, small, tentative, but full of meaning. Grace knelt down beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're doing so well, sweetie," she said, her voice full of pride. "I'm so proud of you." That evening, Grace and David watched from the living room as Lily played with Max in the backyard. She was laughing, her voice light and carefree as she threw a ball for Max to chase. She had always been so reserved, so withdrawn. But now, with Max by her side, there was a lightness in her that Grace hadn't seen before. Max's influence on Lily was nothing short of miraculous. The dog had a quiet way of bringing out the best in her, drawing her out of her shell without demanding anything. He simply sat beside her, nudged her gently when she seemed to retreat, and, more than anything, made her feel safe. A few weeks later, Lily's teacher asked Grace if Lily had been doing better at home. Grace smiled, thinking of all the little victories, the moments when Lily spoke just a little more, shared just a little more. Yes, Grace replied. She's more open now. She's started speaking more at home, and she's more comfortable. Lily's teacher nodded. It's wonderful to see the change in her. She's become more engaged in class. And I've noticed that she's participating more in group activities. Grace beamed. It wasn't just the words. It was the spark in Lily's eyes that had been missing for so long. In the quiet moments at home, when it was just Lily and Max together, Grace noticed another subtle shift. Lily would sit on the floor, drawing or playing with toys, and Max would quietly curl up beside her, his head resting on her lap. Sometimes, Lily would talk to him, telling him stories about the adventures she imagined, or even about the things that made her nervous. Max's eyes would follow her every move, his tail gently thumping against the floor. He wasn't just a dog, he was a bridge to the world Lily had never quite understood, a world that had once felt too big and too noisy. And then, one afternoon, something amazing happened. Lily came home from school with a small piece of paper in her hand. She walked up to Grace, her hands shaking slightly as she handed it to her. Grace took it, her heart beating faster. It was a note from Lily's teacher, written in neat, encouraging handwriting. Lily participated in the group discussion today. She spoke to the class and shared her thoughts about the project. It was a breakthrough for her. Grace's eyes filled with tears as she read the note. Lily, she whispered, pulling her daughter into her arms. You did it. You spoke to the class. Lily smiled, her face glowing with pride. Max helped me, Mom. He made me feel brave. In that moment, Grace realized that the bond between Lily and Max had done something she hadn't thought possible. It had given Lily the courage to face the world. Through their quiet connection, Max had opened the doors to communication for Lily, allowing her to begin connecting with others in ways she had never been able to before. Max hadn't just been a dog, he had been the catalyst for change, the constant presence who had patiently stood by Lily's side as she learned to speak, to be heard, and to connect. The silence that had once surrounded Lily was slowly breaking apart. With Max's unwavering love and companionship, Lily was learning to speak, to express herself, and to reach out to the world. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a voice, and she was finding the courage to use it. Max had given Lily more than just friendship. He had given her the gift of communication, a bridge to the world she had always wanted to be a part of. And for the first time in her life, Lily felt like she was finally being seen. Months passed, and Lily's life was changing in ways that were nothing short of miraculous. With Max by her side, the girl who had once been lost in a world of silence was now beginning to find her voice. She wasn't just speaking more at home, she was becoming more involved at school, more engaged in her surroundings, and more open to the people around her. Every little victory felt monumental to Grace and David, who watched their daughter blossom before their eyes. One bright spring afternoon, as Lily sat in the living room doing her homework, Max lay by her feet, his head resting on her lap. She absent-mindedly stroked his fur as she worked through her math problems. "Max," ever patient, didn't ask for anything in return. His steady presence had become her source of comfort, especially on the days when life felt a little too overwhelming. Lily looked down at him and whispered, "I'm going to try harder today, Max. I'm going to talk to someone." Max's ears perked up at the sound of her voice. He looked up at her with those warm, trusting eyes, as if to say, "You can do it, Lily. I'm here with you." For the first time, Lily believed him. Later that day, when Lily arrived at school, she walked through the front doors with Max's soft, unspoken encouragement still in her heart. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she felt stronger now. Her classmates had started to notice the changes in her, and while she still struggled with eye contact and didn't always know how to express herself, she could feel the walls between her and the rest of the world beginning to crumble. During recess, Lily found herself standing by the playground equipment, watching the other children run and play. She could feel the urge to withdraw, as she often did, but today something was different. With Max's quiet presence in her thoughts, Lily felt the courage to approach a group of girls playing hopscotch. She hesitated for a moment, her hands trembling as she stepped closer to them. Her voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Can I play too?" The girls stopped and looked at her, and for a brief, panicked moment, Lily wondered if she had made a mistake. But then, one of the girls smiled warmly at her and said, "Of course, come join us." The others nodded in agreement. Lily's heart skipped a beat. She had done it. She had spoken, and someone had heard her. It was a simple interaction, but to Lily, it felt like a huge step forward. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. That evening, as Lily walked home with her parents, she couldn't contain her excitement. "Mom, Dad," she said eagerly, "I played with the other kids today. They asked me to join in." She grinned, her face radiating joy. Grace and David exchanged a look of astonishment, their hearts overflowing with pride. "That's amazing, Lily!" Grace exclaimed, pulling her daughter into a tight hug. "We're so proud of you." Lily smiled, but then she paused and looked down at Max, who was walking beside them. "Max helped me," she said simply. "He always makes me feel safe. He makes me feel like I can do anything." Max's tail wagged, his head held high as he walked beside them. It wasn't just that he had been a companion, he had been the one who had patiently encouraged her when no one else could. He had been the quiet listener, the constant presence that made Lily feel like she wasn't alone. He had helped her find the strength to face the world, and in return, Lily had found a voice she never knew she had. Over time, Lily's interactions with others became more frequent and more comfortable. She still had moments of doubt, of course, and there were still days when she retreated into herself. But with Max by her side, those moments became shorter. She no longer felt as though she were drifting through life, untethered. Max had given her the courage to connect, to reach out, and to be seen. At school, Lily's teachers noticed the difference as well. She was participating more in class, raising her hand to answer questions, and even asking for help when she needed it. She had become more open, more confident, and more willing to engage in social situations. Her progress was gradual, but it was real. One afternoon, as Lily sat in the school library, she was approached by a classmate who had always kept her distance. "Hi, Lily," the girl said shyly. "I saw you playing with the other kids yesterday. I was wondering if you'd want to sit with me at lunch tomorrow?" Lily blinked, surprised by the invitation. She hadn't expected it, but the words came out before she could think twice. "I'd like that," she said softly. "Thank you." As Lily sat at the lunch table the next day, chatting with her new friend, she realized just how far she had come. She had once been so trapped in silence, unable to connect with anyone, unable to find her place. But now, with Max's quiet strength beside her, she was no longer invisible. She had a voice, a presence, and the courage to speak her truth. Max had opened the door to a world Lily had only dreamed of. Through his gentle companionship, she had learned that it was okay to speak, to connect, and to be part of something bigger than herself. With each step forward, Lily was discovering that the world wasn't as overwhelming as it once seemed, it was just waiting for her to step into it. And through it all, Max remained at her side, a steadfast friend, a protector, and the constant reminder that no matter how silent or alone she once felt, she was never truly alone. The story of Lily and Max teaches us a powerful lesson about the transformative impact of unconditional love and companionship. Max, the dog, not only provided comfort and safety for Lily, but also became the catalyst for her emotional and social growth. Through their bond, Lily discovered the courage to step out of her isolated world, communicate with others, and form meaningful connections. Max's presence highlighted the importance of patience, trust, and the quiet support that animals offer to those in need, especially children with special needs like Lily. In real life, this story resonates with the many children and adults who struggle with communication or social interaction. Animals, particularly dogs, have been shown to provide emotional support, improve mental health, and help bridge the gap for individuals facing various challenges. This story underscores how pets can act as a bridge to help people overcome obstacles in their lives, encouraging them to open up and connect with the world around them. It also reminds us of the power of empathy and how, sometimes, all it takes is a loving companion to help us find our voice and courage to face life's challenges.